welcome. This is part 2 of the slide table XY table build. Today we're going to cover how to make calibrated dials for your slide table. They're calibrated in thousandths of an inch. Also going to cover mounting the vise and mounting the table to your drill press table. And toward the end of the video we're going to cover some tricks on how to better utilize this slide table. I think you'll find it interesting, so stay tuned. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, here's what I countersinked and put some 5/16 bolts in. I would have preferred socket head, but all I had was Phillips. But it goes through the slots in my table. Of course, every drill press has different style table with different slots. Just drill the holes wherever you need them, but make sure and countersink them so they don't interfere with the slide table. I did the same kind of thing with my vise, except I didn't countersink. I bolted from the top and threaded the plate. I may have to go back later. It's not a whole lot of threads in here. I may have to go back later and countersink it and put a bolt in from the bottom. But I'm sure this will work good for a while. Okay, let's get started on these dials. I made these hubs yesterday. They're going to go on the end of the slide table adjustments. And this is an aluminum sleeve I'm making. I'm boring that out to fit that. That will be the dial that will slide on the hub. So I can reset my zero. I'm going to put a couple of nylon tip set screws in them so that I can grab this and turn the dial back to zero. It'll make it real user friendly. Anyway, I got to finish boring this. I put a line right there. That line I need to line up with the chuck key on my chuck. And the reason I did that is if my chuck's out of line, I need to be able to take it out of the chuck and put it back in and still have it concentric to the chuck. So let's get started. Sometimes you don't get what you want with a boring bar. That's 980. So 980, 1 minus 980 is 20 thousandths, so I like 10 more thousandths. It's good. Good. Okay, the next step is to take off just a very slight amount to give me a clean surface to work from and also to make it concentric with my chuck. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, this is left over from last time I made lathe dials. And all it is a piece of 1-inch stock. And I cut, it doesn't even have to be that long, it could be that long or that long, a section to go inside the lathe spindle. That's an enlarged section to stop it. And there's some threads right there. Those threads were cut so that a saw blade will fit on that, a 100-tooth saw blade. And I think I haven't used it for a while. This, I think I cut that too short right there. Of course, it's going to be different for every lathe. But you put that in there, and then you put a washer inside the chuck. Okay, here's the 100-tooth saw blade. And you'll notice I've got it divided. Each one of these larger marks is 10, and each one of these small marks is a 5. That'll make it easy to lay out our dial. This thing right here is my clicker. I gotta get a wrench and tighten that down. I think I put a clamp on here to hold my clicker, but that'll be our indexing. Okay, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to disconnect the power on the lathe, because at this point we don't need it, and that's not going to do that any good if we turn the power on. So what I'm doing here is disengaging my drive here. So now I'm freewheeling. I don't know if all lathes have that or not. It's supposed to be used to engage the back gear. Anyway, we're ready to get started now. I had this out so that I could put my washer and nut inside the chuck. Red line to the chuck key. Okay, what I'm doing here, using one of these welded carbide cheap little lathe tools, and I'm putting it sideways in my tool. You know, normally you'd run it like that. It's probably a threading tool. Put it in there like that. A little bit of overhang on it doesn't hurt. Let it hang out maybe 3/4 inch to an inch. And I want to set that up about center. Next step is to decide how long we want to scribe a mark in there. And I think I'm going to make it about halfway. I still got to have room to stamp numbers in there. So, yeah, I think halfway would be good. Now these are the 10s. I got a carriage stop here. You got to have a carriage stop. If you don't have one, you need one. There we go. That's my stop. That's the length of my 10. So right here, I want to start on our 10. Right there. Reverse it into the gullet. Now I'm ready to make my first scribe. Okay, here it goes. That wasn't deep enough. Okay, I think that was deep enough. Hopefully not too deep. If you make them too deep, it'll make a rough line. Okay, I've got all my 10s, now I'm going on the 5s, and I want to probably go about halfway. Maybe a little more. Okay, now we're doing the 1s. I've already moved the carriage top, hopefully it's about right. Yeah, you can kind of see it pretty good right like that. Of course, we'll go over, I'll start the lathe up and put a tool in there and true that all up. Takes off all those burrs. I've also got some stuff coming called aluminum black. And I'm going to paint the dial and then take a light pass with the lathe tool, and maybe it'll make those marks show up real good, be black below the surface. I've tried to do that with paint, and the paint won't stick to the aluminum. But this aluminum black may do the trick. It's supposed to be here today, so let me finish this up. Well, there it is. It'll look a lot better after I turn all those burrs off of there. As soon as I get that aluminum blacking on there, I'll do that. Well, the aluminum black is here. Must be some kind of chemical reaction because it's totally clear. It wasn't black at all. They say to put it on with a Q-tip. Wow. I'm thinking a brush. Okay. Well, obviously we got some black going on there. It said to leave it on 1 minute and then rinse it off and buff it. You know, it's not going to get buffed. But I left it on there about 5 minutes. I'll rinse that off and see what it looks like. Well, it's not jet black, but it'll probably improve the visibility of the dial. It says for best results, let it cure overnight. I'll give it a couple hours and then try turning that off on the lathe. Well, there it is. It's not real black like I'd like to see it. Let's clean it up and see what it looks like. Hope I didn't take too much. Not too bad, not as nice as I thought it would be, but well, I'm not too impressed with the aluminum black. Maybe I didn't use it right, I don't know. But overall, it looks pretty good. Well, I got it turned around and I'm going to make the dial on the other side before I separate them. Okay, here's the completed dial. I cut it in half. The camera battery died when I was cutting it in half, so I don't have any record of that, but I used the cutoff tool on the lathe and cut it in half. Here's how it works. That goes over that. This hub goes over that. Tighten the set screw. And that's moving your table. I'll probably put a crank on that. Anyway, that goes over the hub. This has got the calibration on it, and I need to put numbers on it still. But I'll put a nylock set screw in there, or a thumb screw or something, where I can reset the 0. And I'll put an indicator arrow right there. Anyway, next step is to put numbers on that dial. Okay, here's what I've used before to stamp numbers in dials. Pretty crude. Just a piece of pipe I turned down for the right diameter of the inside of a dial. This one doesn't fit though. Needs to be a good fit. And you just clamp that in the vise, and then your number stamp slides in that groove, and you just line your dial up and stamp your number in there. So I'm going to reuse this one. I'm going to bore that out a little bigger, and I got a piece of 3/4 inch stock left over from something, and I'm going to put that in there and then clamp that in the vise. Kind of crude. It'll work. Okay, here it goes. I've got a mark on the opposing side, and it looks like it's lining up right. Okay. Not a real good mark, but it's all right. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Not the greatest numbers, but they'll work. Okay, I'm going to put these little screws right there on the 0. That's the screw to reset my 0. Okay, I got these Belleville washers. They're cone-shaped spring washers. I'm going to put one of those right there. Might help keep some of the backlash out. Then put the dial, the hub, Got a few little burrs from that screw right there. Anyway, reset to 0. It's about 10 thousandths backlash. It's in the threads. Now all I got to do is come up with an indicator right there and a crank. Well, the XY table is all done. I was just calibrating the vise. I'll show you what I mean by calibrating. Okay, I've got the vise mounted to the table, and I was in the process of squaring it up, meaning I want the back jaw parallel to this axis. It's probably obvious why you want to do that. You can lay out holes, have them all in a row, and drill accurately. But to do that, you put a dial indicator on the column or whatever, the drill press body, and indicate off this back jaw. You can move this axis so you're right on 0. Let me zoom in. So we're on 0. There's also an adjustment on the indicator like that. You can see it's pretty sensitive. I mean, you can. But ideally, each one of those marks is 1/2 thousandths. So it's a pretty sensitive gauge. It picks up every little defect in the jaw. But what I'm aiming for is 1 to 1.5 thousandths. Let's see what we got. All those little movements you see are either slop in the cross slide or defects in the metal on the jaw, little dents. I like it. That's about 1/2 thousandths that way. I think we started out about 1/2 thousandths the other way. Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. Of course, this axis, I'm moving the other axis with the hand dial. Well, I'm fairly happy with the dials. I'm fairly happy with the whole table, actually. I extended my vise handle so that on the extreme end of the travel, the adjustment wouldn't interfere with the vise handle. It's probably an area where you would never be, but the shoe polish in the dials made them pretty visible. I like it. Okay, I got one more thing to show you on setting up your slide table. This right here is called an edge finder. It's got kind of a weird end on it. It's got a spring in there that holds that on. The way you use it, put it in the chuck. Lock your quill in that position. See it wobbling? Okay, when I move the table, that hits the back jaw, it starts to stabilize. Zoom in. It's wobbling. Now when it touches the back jaw, it stabilizes. And at one point it'll be totally stationary and then move to the left. See it move to the left? Okay, that right there is 0, but that's 200 thousandths in diameter. So you raise this up, and then on your dial, pick any number and move it one turn. So it's on 7 right now. So if I move it, lock it down. move it one turn, went the wrong way, one turn, like that. Now the drill bit falls exactly on the edge of the vise, the center of that chuck. So I set that on 0. That set screw right there is on 0. That's 0, 1, 2, whatever. So the center of this falls exactly on that edge. Show you what I mean. Here's a countersink. You can see it pretty easy on the countersink. That's exactly touching the corner of that. Like I just nicked it a little bit. So let me show you how that's very useful. I got my dial calibrated so that 0 falls right on the edge of that. If I want to drill in the middle of that, as long as I know that diameter, which in this case is 1 inch, if I want to drill right in the center, and I can go turn my dial 5 turns for a 1/2 inch. Five turns. Did I go 5? If you drilled a hole through that, it would be perfectly centered. Right there. Now I'll go 1 turn further. And I'm dead on the corner of that vise. Dead on the corner of that. Right there. Now you might ask, why is that important? Well, say I want to drill some holes in this piece of steel here. The steel is 1 inch wide. I'm going to line it up with this jaw right there. Okay. Zoom out. Now, 10 turns is 1 inch, so I want to go 5 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm exactly on the center. Now, if I want to go a 1/2 inch in, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm centered this way and a 1/2 inch this way. Drill a hole. Okay, say I want a series of 3 holes 1 inch apart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did I miscount? No, I'm on. Gotta pay attention. Drill a hole there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 3 holes. Of course, I didn't drill them all the way through, but I've got 3 holes centered and 1/2 inch from the edge and 1 inch apart. Okay, a lot of times you think, well, I just want to drill a piece of wood, don't really need to clamp it down, and I want to go completely through. The vise is not big enough for this big piece of wood I want to drill, or a piece of metal. So here's what I came up with. It's I don't know what kind of wood that is, but you could use a block of 2x4 or whatever. Glue it, clamp it and glue it to a piece of scrap of plywood like that. And I've got a bunch of these. They're sacrificial. I mean, I use them up. Obviously I've used this one before. Clamp that in the vise like that. Then I can lay wood in there, drill through without consequence. Here's another neat trick. Router bit. Speed this thing up a little bit. Now my drill press will go 5,600 RPM. That's nowhere near as fast as the router, but it works pretty good. Gotta kind of watch these C-clamps, will get in the way. Yeah, maybe it'll do good without it. Not a useful pattern, but it's still pretty cool capability. The only thing you have to be aware of, and I haven't really touched on this yet, is backlash. Backlash is always going to be an issue on any XY table, mill, whatever. However, there are ways to minimize it. I used a cheap Acme threaded rod on this one. I would suggest buying a little bit more expensive rod. I think I paid $20 for a 3-foot stick. May have been less than that, but pay an extra $10 and get a decent one. The cheaper Acme threaded rod has more backlash. And by backlash, this one here's, it's really not bad though. That's 10 thousandths on this axis. The backlash is how much your dial moves before you get a correction. That's 10 thousandths. Let's see. Yeah, it's about 10 thousandths. 10 thousandths is not a whole lot. Something you would never see in wood. On metal, maybe. Just depends on what you're doing. But anyway, that's the XY table completely done. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it's useful. Be sure and subscribe, and thanks for joining me.